a few slides before. Awesome. So as a note, this meeting is being recorded as part of the compliance with the Maryland Public Records and Public Meetings Act. We have to obviously seek to an extent a certain level of permission for that, but we understand that everything you say is recorded. Jashiva, do we have the closed captioning on?
Yes, they're on.
Okay, so that is available for anyone that needs it or could benefit from it. So with that, I am going to start the slide deck. Share screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yay! The technology even works.
Today.
It's great when that's the case, you know? Okay. So welcome today to the second quarterly meeting. And when I say second, I mean of the state fiscal year quarter, which runs from July 1st to June 30th, of the advisory stakeholder group on autism-related needs. We were originally scheduled for December 12th. I want to apologize for that delay, but around those 2 days, I was sitting in jury duty in the Baltimore City Courthouse, as is the yearly ritual of all of us Baltimore City residents and civic duty. So with them, as we call it, the group, since the name is so long, the group's term that we use is ASGARN. And with that, I just want to start off some housekeeping. Members of the public, please keep your microphones on mute. And by those, I mean those of you who are not ASGARN members. Keep your microphones on mute until the public comment portion of the meeting. Group members, advisory group members, please also keep your microphones muted when not speaking. Keep yourself off camera if you need to step out or whatnot. I don't want to hear a toilet flush, which has happened in board meetings and things like that. To be called on, use the raise hand feature. Like if you need to talk and want to get something out of your chest, use the raise hand feature. If I don't see it, I hope Lisa or Jashiva will let me know, since I'm often focused on the other screen that has the slide deck. Our office is always able to provide accommodations with reasonable notice upon request. We have not received any requests for accommodations this time, but be aware of that need, of that possibility. If you need them, if they will help you, please do not hesitate to reach out, whether to me, and I can forward that to ensure that they happen. And like I said, we have closed captions available today. With that, I will move on to our next slide. As a set of meeting guidelines, which is the goal of ensuring a safe, positive, and inclusive environment, participants, staff, the public, for members, I want to set up a few guidelines, a few rules, so to speak. But rules is kind of a bad word in a way, but I want everyone to assume the positive intent on the part of other members, moderators, participants, staff, to listen actively, allow others to complete their thoughts before you speak, listening to listen, not just listening to respond. We will do one speaker at a time and prioritizing those who haven't spoken yet to prevent any one or person or small group from monopolizing the mic, and obviously default to both and thinking instead of either or. It's pretty simple. Just wanted to get that out of the way. With that,
this is Lydia. It sounds like Michelle and Corey are in the waiting room.
Jashiva, could you let them in?
Sure.
Are they in? Delegate Guyton or Chief of Staff Corey, are you in there?
This is Lydia. I don't see their names in the participants list, so I'm not sure that they're actually in. Is it possible that they have an incorrect Zoom link? Because when I joined the meeting, there was no waiting room and I was directly admitted.
Yeah, the waiting room is not enabled, so I'm trying to figure out where they are.
I think you might need to email them the link to the current Zoom. So if you click the participants button, there's a little
Well-
arrow, and then copy that invite link and shoot them an email with the updated link, because I think that they're attempting to access a wrong link, since I did not have a
Maybe.
reading room.
Copy invite link. I'm going to send it to her immediately. Want all members to be able to participate.
I'm letting them both know now that you're sending them the email, Victoria.
Okay. Do you have Corey's email address? It's not, doesn't seem to be saved here.
I have it somewhere. Give me 1 second.
I think I have it.
Yeshiva, could you go ahead and send it to them to make sure that we get them in quickly?
Yep, I'm doing that right now.
I have Corey's personal email, which is probably not helpful.
I think I have it.
Okay.
Sorry about the delay, everyone. I'm going to step out of the screen share for a moment to make sure I can see the members, the roster.
Copy. All right.
I just sent it to Delegate Guyton's email. So Yeshiva,
I did it.
you can,
I did too.
all right. So I think you can go on mute, Yeshiva, and then Victoria, you can move ahead with the meeting. They'll be in soon.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna go back to sharing the screen. Oh, this is the screen I want to share. Can everybody see the slide?
Yes.
Awesome. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and start the roll call. Starting with the ex officio members that are designees of agencies or organizations named in the statute forming ASGARN. Is starting off with me as chair, Victoria Rodriguez Roldan, present. Please, when your name is called, please say here, indicate your association. Lisabel Castro.
Here. Oh, and
Fatima-
DOD. Sorry about that.
No worries. Fatima Salem. Rachel London.
I'm here, the Executive Director of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council.
Okay, Ray Marshall.
I'm present. I'm here on behalf of the ARC Maryland.
Thank you. Rebecca Ronci.
Here, I'm the Executive Director of Pathfinders for Autism.
Awesome. Amy Taubenfeld.
Here, Executive Director of Itinerus Baltimore.
Carmen Brown.
Hi, I'm here. I'm the Branch Chief for Interagency Collaboration at the Maryland State Department of Education.
Thank you. Courtney Thomas Winterberg. Janet Furman. Okay, moving on to people appointed by the governor. Emily Archer,
Here, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland School Psychologists Association.
thank you. Shannon West. Devin Sutherland,
Here.
thank you. Roger Thibodeau,
Here, representing parents.
Adam Schaefer Jones, Nicole LeBlanc,
Here.
thank you. Lisa Weatherlight,
Here, parent advocate.
Peggy Pugh,
Here, I'm representing K-12. I'm the Chief Academic Officer at Montgomery County Public Schools.
Christy Russell,
Here, I'm a parent and a business owner on the Eastern Shore.
moving on to people appointed by the Coordinator for State Autism Strategy, currently me. Ryan Roddy,
Here, I am a self-advocate and a special educator.
thank you. Jalen Prince,
Here with Madison House Autism Foundation, specializing in working with adults with autism with a major focus on housing, and also a parent.
thank you. Greg Robinson,
Here, Deputy Director of Public Policy for the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, also a self-advocate.
Lydia Brown,
Hello, this is Lydia XV Brown, they, them pronouns. I am the Director of Public Policy at the National Disability Institute and Faculty in Disability Studies at Georgetown University, also the founding Executive Director of the Autistic People of Color Fund. I'm a caregiver as well as a self-advocate.
Jess Wilcox-Cohen,
Here, I am, a visiting assistant professor at Goucher College. I teach in the area of women's gender and sexuality studies. I'm an academic and I work in disability studies, and here as a self-advocate.
Trevor Bird,
Do you want to come be on screen?
I know.
Okay, Trevor Bird is here. He is a non-speaking individual with autism, and he's here to advocate for others.
thank you. Nikki Stokes,
Good afternoon. I'm Nikki Stokes. I'm a parent advocate.
Elizabeth Benavides,
Hi, I'm Beth Benavides. I am Director of Outreach at the Husband Institute for Autism, and I'm also a parent.
thank you. Melissa Rosenberg,
Yes, I'm the director of the Autism Society of Maryland.
Nancy Forsyth,
Here, University of Maryland.
Jerady Vasquez Tavares, Rachel Leah Krause,
I'm here as an autistic self-advocate, parent of an autistic child, and psychotherapist in private practice, specializing in neurodiversity affirmative care.
moving on to those appointed by the Maryland General Assembly. There are 2 positions that can be appointed by the Speaker of the House of Delegates and 1 position to be appointed by the President of the Senate. Currently, only 1 is active. Delegate Michelle Guyton.
She just put in the chat. I'm Corey. I'm her chief of staff. She is in the meeting and she's listening, but she's also on a committee meeting at the current moment. So I can speak on her behalf, but she is in the meeting. So.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to go back to roll or to quickly mention the people who appear as who haven't responded, just in case anyone joined after I mentioned their name. Fatima Salem. Courtney Thomas Winterberg. Janet Furman. Shannon West. Adam Schaefer Jones. Jareli Vasquez Tavares. And that's it. With 26 members present and 6 absent, we have met the needed quorum of 17 people, which is 50% plus 1. Yay. So with that, I will move on to our next slide, which is the approval of the minutes. I believe then that, thank you, Lisa. We're posting in the chat the link to the PDF file of the minutes. If anyone needs to review them, I already sent them a couple days ago, I believe on Wednesday. I just want to propose, if anyone has any questions about them, we can go ahead and entertain a motion to approve them.
Move to approve.
Second.
So
I
moved.
second. Yeah, I second. Oh, I think 5 of us seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. We can do it by live boy, by viva voce, which is everyone agreeing, basically, if nobody is opposed. Nobody opposes that I can see. Motion passes unanimously. Meetings are approved. So with that, we go on to my remarks, and I just want to start thanking everyone. We have new member. Oh, I didn't realize the wheel made a move. I just want to thank the new members of ASGARN for joining. We have been hard at work in the past few months since I joined in the last couple days of August, and since our last quarterly meeting, where we were having to reset the group and the efforts of the Autism Strategy Program because of lack of, honestly, prior compliance issues with the laws that require us to keep records and recordings of meetings and so on, as well as in consultation with our Assistant Attorney General, who acts as our agency's legal counsel, in-house counsel, to ensure that the advisory role of the group is maintained, and we can set on a timeline to ensure that the mandate of the statute creating my position is fulfilled, which is to create a strategic plan on autism to serve as the state's policy on the subject by June 30th, 2024, which is the end of our current fiscal year. And we're still well into that process and aiming for that. And we will be going into that effort. And I want to also thank, in case any of you are here, the people that have attended the listening sessions that I've been at. I've had the opportunity to meet with Spanish-speaking families with the ARC down in Howard County. I've also had the opportunity to visit the western mountainous regions of our state, out in Hagerstown, LaVille, and even Garrett County, to hear out the concerns of rural autistic people and families. So with that, I will start moving on, which is to go into some of what has happened to meet that process. We have, in order to meet the compliance process and transparency that wasn't being met in the prior iteration of this program, we have dedicated a section of the MDOD website to ASGARN. You can look it up at mdod.maryland.gov. All the meeting minutes, presentation materials, advisory meeting dates are listed there. We established a process for coordinator appointments Previously, there were no clear records that weren't conflicting with each other of who had been the coordinator appointed members appointed by the prior coordinator. So we had to wipe out the slate and appoint new members. So we established a membership committee that we will go into to help choose 12 new members. Practically almost all of you are here except for one that had a personal family emergency at the last minute, and I want to thank the members of the committee. And we created a clear, accurate, and updated membership list that is posted to the MDOD website at, again, mdod.maryland.gov. I would encourage you, if you're a member, to go to the website, see the list. Let me know if for some reason there's a typo in your name, you'd like something added or a preferred name issue, just let us know. So with that, I'm going to go into the topic of the membership committee. I did appoint at the time to help streamline, make easier, make sure that I wasn't alone in the process, losing my sanity with like 40 or 60 applications that we got in the search process for ASGARN members. A whole committee to help out and maintain transparency. And that was Amy Taubenfeld, the itinerarist, Emily Archer, who is here today with us, and Courtney Thomas Winterberg, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but is the DHS designee and is with DSS in Allegheny County. And that was the purpose of it, to review applications and advise me in exercising the appointing authority that I have under the statute. And Amy and Emily, if you want to give an update of the work of the committee.
Sure. So the committee met for 2 different meetings, specifically to look over the list of applicants. Victoria wanted to ensure that we had a fair representation of self-advocates, parents, professionals. And then again, we were advocating for just a mix of several of the people who had been putting in a lot of the hard work in the beginning and have had a lot of time invested in some of these committees. The first meeting, we identified a group of, I believe it was either 6 or 7 members who were advocates, self-advocates. I believe that was it for the first group. And then the second group, we looked at the rest of the list, and there had been additional names added at that point, and we were also ensuring good representation across the state. So we were looking at some of the underrepresented areas and making sure that we had representation there, as well as parents. Emily, feel free to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I think that that's a great summary of the process. We did meet, actually, I believe it was 3 times in order to determine, based on the applicants we had at that point in time, who would help to round out our group in order to ensure that we have great representation of all of our Marylanders to the best of our ability in terms of self-advocates, parents, and professionals.
Thank you. And yeah, it was a pretty long Excel spreadsheet that we kept messing around with highlighter, with the highlighter function. And I'm more used to Google Sheets, but since not everyone had a Maryland.gov address, we were using Excel, and I was, losing my sanity with all those names. And I want to thank everyone who was part of this process. And I also want to add, as we go, I think the next slide is the new members. Oh. Which is, this slide isn't quite the full list of 12 people that I appointed. I'm just focusing on the people that are completely new to ASGARN, that did not form part of the prior iteration of ASGARN, which are Lydia Brown, attorney Lydia Brown, Dr. Jess Coing, Trevor Bird, Dr. Vasquez Tavares, who unfortunately could not make it today because of a last-minute family emergency, and Rachel Leah Krause. And also I want to add that Christy Russell was appointed by the governor between the last meeting and the current as to the business owner position, representing the business community. She is a parent and is from the Eastern Shore, which was an underrepresented area that we were prioritizing and getting. I would love to hear introductions from the new people so that we can get to know you. If you could say just a couple brief things about yourself. So, Christy, still start there.
Christy,
Christy
this is
Russ.
Lydia. If you're speaking, you're on mute.
I apologize. I had an issue with my headset. Hi, I'm Christy Russell. I have a 15-year-old son that is autistic. I am a business owner on the Eastern Shore. I founded Canera Foundation in 2012 and passed that nonprofit off to a new executive director. I'm also the former director of operations for the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council, and look forward to doing this work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia, do you want to introduce yourself while I try to re-sign because the government email address signed me out like it does every 24 hours and I have to do two-factor authentication.
This is Lydia. Good luck with your two-factor authentication situation. I did introduce myself a little bit over email the other day in response to the reminder for the meeting. But for those of you who don't know me and/or are overwhelmed by email and therefore did not read what I had to say, which is fine, and I am not offended. I've worked in the area of disability rights and disability justice for 15 years. I've worked on autism policy in particular for most of that time. I've previously served as chairperson for a different state's developmental disabilities council, and I'm currently faculty in one of the federally funded leadership education and neurodevelopmental disabilities programs at Georgetown University. I also have experience having been a special education lawyer, and I represented largely students, whether autistic or having other intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout the state of Maryland. And I currently, as I mentioned, am Director of Public Policy at the National Disability Institute. We focus specifically on economic and finance policy impacting people with disabilities. So we do a lot of work around issues including asset limits, public benefits, access to tax saving instruments such as ABLE accounts. We're the people that originally wrote the ABLE legislation, as well as the ABLE Acts, the Age Adjustment Act, and a number of other issue areas in that realm. So if anyone is ever interested in talking to me about financial planning, financial counseling, and empowerment, both for autistic people and for families, like I am your person. I'm happy to talk about that. My other work has to do with LGBTQ and racial justice advocacy as relates to people with disabilities. And so I've done a lot of training on sex education for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've consulted with numerous school districts in and outside of Maryland, as well as with other professional associations. If you go to ASHA, I have keynoted that conference. And if you are involved in the autistic self-advocacy movement, you have probably seen me somewhere at some point. I've also worked for a long time with a number of autistic-led organizations. And as I mentioned, I've been a family caregiver as well as being an autistic self-advocate myself. So I'm very happy to meet all of you who I don't yet know. And I am really excited to see a lot of people who I do know. So that makes me very happy to know that I am among friends. And I will turn it back to you, Victoria.
Dr. Cohen, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure, I said a little bit at the beginning. My name is Jess Wilcox-Cowing. My pronouns are they and them. I am a visiting assistant professor at Goucher College, and I'm teaching in the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies department. I get to teach really fun courses, Introduction to Race, Gender, and Sexuality. I also get to teach disability studies, which is a passion area of mine. So I'm an academic. My background is that I have a PhD in American Studies, and I also have a background in literary studies, cultural studies, and feminist disability theory. I've done some organizing and work in kind of an academic context in terms of advocating for greater accessibility at academic conferences for queer, trans, and disabled people. In my role as an academic, I also mentor a lot of undergraduate students who are also autistic or other kinds of neurodivergent. That's a big part of what I see as my work in the academic and education sphere. And sometimes I do consulting or talks for folks in other parts of the country on disability and queer and trans issues broadly. So that's me. Nice to see all of you. Nice to be here.
Awesome.
Oh, and I'm also, sorry, I should mention I'm also an autistic person myself. So also in the self-advocate category.
And this is Lydia. Jess, don't you also have a sibling who's diagnosed with autism too?
Oh, yes, I do. I have family members who are autistic. So I have, in addition to being autistic myself, I have a lot of lived experience and personal family experience in the area, navigating healthcare and all the things. Thank you.
Awesome. So Trevor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Trevor's communication partner for this day. And for this meeting, he asked that I express to you all that he is happy to be in this group. He is starting his adult life. He's 21 and getting into some advocating. And he's really thrilled that he is having this opportunity to represent non-speakers.
Thank you. Like I mentioned, Dr. Vasquez Tavares could not attend at the last minute, so I'm going to pass it on to Rachel.
There's been taking some notes here because I'm not good at necessarily talking on the fly. The best I can. I'm Rachel. My pronouns are she and her. I'm Maryland born and raised. I am a ADHD late diagnosed self-advocate, also a parent of a 7-year-old gender non-conforming ADHD child, currently in the Howard County school system, and we're deep in the IEP 504 process. So I'm getting to that quite intimately. I am a psychotherapist. I've been a therapist for about 15 or so years now, and just left Shepherd Pratt after working there for quite a few years. I just left last February, so about a year now. I've been in private practice exclusively with a specialization in neurodiversity affirmative care, DBT informed, and I just got back from the conference out in Seattle where we announced we signed, a colleague and I signed a contract with Guilford Publishing for adapting DBT for autistic folks. We had run a workshop out there on it, and so that was really exciting. I also, do clinician consultations, especially for non-autistic clinicians working with autistic folks about neurodiversity affirmative care, DBT, do trainings on working with folks that meet the PDA profile, adults and kids. And I think that's all the notes I got down. I'm just really excited to be here and be able to join a group that can help make positive change for folks on a larger level than just one-to-one or in group. So
Thank you. With that, I'll move on to the next slide. This is the list after new people have introduced themselves. This is the total list of everyone appointed. This is the full final slate. So far, there are a couple governor vacancies representing certain communities and for the MGA appointments. But other than that, we're currently at, according to the roll call sheet, 32 total members, both appointed by the governor, ex officio members whose organizations or agencies are mentioned in the statute, appointed by the General Assembly or appointed by the coordinator, which are 12 people right now, who is me at this time. So awesome. Which is where we go into the meat of the presentation to give an idea of where, because I've been insisting we are going to have a strategic plan published at the end of this fiscal year on June 30th, to be probably presented at some pompous press conference in July alongside the state disabilities plan. that MDOD is preparing, which is, this is a strategy that we've been working here at the department to, under my direction, to lead in a timeline, in a directed timeline to get there. And there is a part that is already going on. So January 2024 is kind of almost a misnomer, which is external analysis, internal analysis. And then throughout between January and May, we're talking of the strategic direction, defining the goal and objective development, defining the metrics by which we are going. And between May and July, it's write and publish, basically. Write and publish this baby. Those of you who are in academia, I was the child of two academics. I don't want this to be like PhD dissertations, which take years and kill people's ambitions and hopes and dreams. This will get out. I'm sticking my career on that. And then after July 2024, we move into the implementation phase. And after a few years, we then move into a phase of reviewing what are the successes and failures and moving into a new strategic plan like we're supposed to do with these. So with that, and by the way, if anyone raises their hand, I might not be able to see you. So Lisa, I hope you can see them. So just let me know if anyone's like trying to get my attention.
I'm on it, Victoria. All is good. I
Thank
got
you.
you if anyone raises their hand.
Okay, so that brings us to the strategic plan development process. What is the external analysis that has already been going on for a while, which is listening sessions. I am organizing this January a visit to Salisbury and to Cambridge out in the Eastern Shore to meet with people. Lisa and I in November spent a good part of a while traveling through the Western Panhandle in Mountain, Maryland, starting out in Hagerstown and then the next day in LaVale, just outside of Cumberland, in Allegheny County, and out in Garrett County, meeting with families, with parents, educators, and whatnot, and other stakeholders to hear out essentially, and part of why I'm emphasizing the shore and Western Maryland so much, and I'm trying to see if I can accommodate something for Southern Maryland that goes south of Waldorf, to be honest, which is almost a decent suburb at this point, is that I want to make sure that all the underrepresented areas of the state are heard. And we've learned a lot of a need for rural engagement and needs with that. Stakeholder engagement, organization engagement. Many of you have been part of this process, and I've had the opportunity to meet with a lot of organizations and groups across the state. There's also the internal analysis element, which is the topic of engagement across state government. I've been having the opportunity to both consult with the various policy director experts we have here in MDOD, which is a big part of why the General Assembly had the wisdom to put this program within the Department of Disabilities, where we have so many people who are experts in their fields like housing, education, healthcare, and so on in the general disability perspective. And also other agencies like MSD, the State Department of Education, working with issues like the Autism Waiver Program, and I can keep on going. Like I don't want to bore you to death with details because I could spend a whole hour and a half talking about the meetings I've had. But the strategic direction is the part that begins today. There's the mission and vision statement input, which is going to be wrapped up by mid-January, by mid to late January. In the goals and objective planning, which will begin in the next subcommittee meetings, which I will be scheduling them for end of January, mid to end of January. And I know there had been some concerns, and I want to thank everyone who was in the prior iteration of ASGARN before 2023, before the current reorganization by the General Assembly and it being housed in the Department of Disabilities, and for working on this topic and all that. And I want to basically assure, like, part of why we're revisiting some of these basic ground level things is basically compliance. Like I discussed, in big part because ASGARN, despite the amazing work that the members were doing, my predecessor did not provide the support needed, both agency, legal counsel, and so on. There wasn't the compliance, record keeping, and so forth, as well as the adherence to certain guiding stars that I am in consultation with agency leadership and council, ensuring that we are in compliance with federal laws, state constitutional mandates, and so on that apply to the state. Since as conduits of the governor and of the state, we have an interest to ensure that what will be the state's primary policy on autism issues is compliant with federal law. Did somebody talk? I mean, if you don't want to talk, just put yourself on mute. That's okay. Just raise your hand, and if anyone needs to interject. But I want to finish this out, which is that I want to make sure that we are in compliance with what I've been calling these guiding stars. I mean, if I were to be blunt, we'll get sued and get into legal trouble if we get them, and I don't want the state being in legal trouble. That would be bad. Which is where we go into. For example, autism is legally defined as a disability, and thus we have to abide by the various federal disability discrimination laws, such as the ADA, the IDEA, Section 504, its progeny of federal court decisions, such as the Olmstead jurisprudence by the U.S. Supreme Court, and its entire progeny of federal court decisions applying it, as well as the enforcement of U.S. DOJ Civil Rights Division and the other agency offices of civil rights, where I had the opportunity to start my career at DOL. And most federal and state discrimination law on disability focuses on has a mandate to ensure that people with disabilities live in the community, encourages self-determination, desegregation, deinstitutionalization as the ideal mandate to constantly follow. So Maryland policy must by definition comply with that and ensure that the default supported by the state is inclusion in the community, desegregated environments in access to healthcare, education, housing, at home and community-based services instead of institutional settings, assisted decision-makings in lieu of guardianship as the encouraged model, the independent living model overall, which is highly funded by the federal government, and in education, one example, so I could keep going, is, for example, discouragement and reduction of seclusion and restraint in schools to the minimum needed. And the second one that I talk about is trying also going to that mandate of non-discrimination. For example, to be honest, in that spirit, a common life experience of many autistic people diagnosed in childhood, as well as their parents, is essentially being told some version or other of your child won't amount to much in life. They'll never go to school or live on their own or get married. And this gets reinforced by young childhood professionals, educators, and it essentially becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, regardless of the child's capabilities and abilities, instead of being encouraged to fulfill the fullest potential. And we want, thus, as the state's policy and the spirit of what federal and state disability law requires, both because we believe in the department in the inclusion of people with disabilities in our communities, and because we have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, we must require and ensure that education, healthcare, and employment resources of our state as a policy are encouraging all autistic people to reach their maximum potential, regardless of what that is, and regardless of how many or few supports they need. Ensure that they receive those supports. And when I say I sometimes like to term this final bullet point of Maryland values, but there's also a legal compliance element to live up to these values, which, because they're expressed in the policies and laws passed by a legislative assembly by our voters and reflected in the policies of our current governor's administration. And it requires and guarantees certain rights beyond the federal ones based on our values, such as full inclusion of LGBTQ people and all our facets of society, including but not limited to issues such as access to gender-affirming healthcare, non-discrimination, affirmation, all facets of daily life, such as education, and in healthcare, the guarantee of access to reproductive healthcare, including but not limited to abortion. And I will stress it is not the role of either the coordinator, me in my position, or of ASGARN to pass judgment on the wisdom or lack thereof of these policies, but it is our mandate to ensure that as long as they exist as mandates of the state, that autistic Marylanders have the same guarantees and protections and access in both policy and practice to all these policies. And as long as these policies are the case for all Marylanders, it would also be, and I say this with relative insider knowledge of how HHS, OCR, and DOJ CRT think, it would be also potential ADA and 1557 discrimination to not guarantee that access based on disability, whether in practice or law. So with that in mind, of the legal guardrails that we have to keep in mind when it comes to our values and principles and mission that will be reflected in the process, then we go into what is going to be vision, mission, and core guiding principles, which focuses, and I have this chart that we were working on. Why is the work we're doing so important? How can we make a positive impact on autistic Marylanders? What values do you think are most important for us to stick to? What are the biggest issues we need to tackle? And we'll be sending, this isn't the only time in this discussion. I want to hear some of your input, but this isn't the only time that we will be hearing input. We will be sending in the next 24 hours, Monday morning at the latest, Google form asking for every member their input into what should be the vision and the mission guiding principles of ASGARN as we move into the strategic planning process. So with that, I want to hear some of your thoughts, and I'm going to move it to the next slide to give that idea. The activity of the Google form will be due on January 16th, so we can move quickly on this. And
Victoria, I'm gonna hop in really quick just because
Yeah.
we have a hand that's raised.
Who is that?
Lisa Weeder-Light.
I have a question for clarification, and then I just wanted to give some thoughts on what I've heard. It sounds like, and I'm not sure if I'm right, so this is my question for clarification, that you mentioned earlier the group that started the ASGARN 2 years ago was engaging in practices that were not within the context of federal law. If that's correct, I'd like to know specifically what you're referencing as it pertains to meetings that we may have had.
I'm not saying that there were any violations of federal law, and I'm not the person to pass judgment. That would be any federal members, but I am saying that the strategic planning process as we're embarking on, that we have to start anew because of lack of compliance with the advisory role and the public meetings and so on, as well as whatnot, needs to have those guardrails of federal requirements and state constitutional requirements of policy.
So are you saying then that we were non-compliant with federal rules in the ASGARN? I mean, I'm trying to get my arms around it because we had the participation of people with disabilities. We followed the legislation which started this HB 847. I'm just confused because it seems like what we've done prior to this seems to be able to be pushed aside for assumptions or saying things that are not specific. And I'm curious as to what specifically would be the reason why things like the vision and mission statement would not be accepted so we can move on to our work, given that we actually voted unanimously in a meeting where people with disabilities were present and voting and MDOD had representation. So I'm not quite sure, like in what you were saying, if I could discern any specifics on why that may be the case.
Okay, before we move on, the I'm talking about two different things in a way, and I think we're merging them together accidentally when you're talking there. But the reason why we're restarting the vision mission process and the entire strategic planning process is basically because ASGARN as a whole was not being given the support, the institutional support needed by agencies and by the coordinator, my predecessor, to ensure that everything was compliant with both the advisory nature of ASGARN as well as the what do you call it? The compliance with meetings being public, being recorded, minutes being kept, and I can keep on going because of the relative lack of record and notes and whatnot. We figured it was best to just restart the process, even if I'm not discarding that the possibility that the end result is very similar to what was already done. That is a possibility, or even identical. But I just want to say, as that's the period on start of new sentence and paragraph is, as we move into strategic process and ask for input from people, I'm just saying what are guiding stars legally that we need to ensure are met.
I appreciate that. It sounded like you were referencing that we weren't following those guidance stars. And as an active member, as well as a committee chair, I can say that it wasn't the case that those weren't being followed. Specifically, there was only one meeting where there were no notes. Every meeting of the ASGARN was public and publicized by myself as well as a member. But to make this short, I mean, again, what I can say is, as a state level organization created by Maryland statute, the full ASGARN committee previously voted unanimously, again, in September, I believe, of 2022. And the meetings were actually, that meeting was videoed and put on GOSI's website for all to see, to approve the mission and vision statement, which the committee chairs actually put together. It had nothing to do with Katie, it had to do with the ASGARN. And again, that was us, that's our group.
Lisa, I just want to thank you for that input. And before we move on, I want to make sure.
I would like to actually finish what I have to say. It's very important. And as a member, I'd appreciate the ability to continue. At that time, MDOD had representation, as I mentioned, and the majority of the current ASGARN members were represented at that meeting. With the ambitious agenda that we have before us, I think it's important for us to move forward rather than move backwards and talk about something we've already done. I'd be more than happy to read the vision and mission statements to people who have not heard it because they're new. But the majority of our committee already, or that full ASGARN, already voted on this. And again, that meeting should be available on Maryland State website somewhere or available through the state of Maryland, because that was videoed, again, I believe in September of 2022. But then equally as important, and I appreciate Lydia pointing out in her email, I love that email, that, you know, we have new members and it will be good for them to get some background on the work that's already been done so people could know where we're coming from, both with the ASGARN as well as with our committees, because we do have to step back with our committees and we'll have the majority new people on our committees. So your predecessor didn't really onboard people effectively. I'm sure most people who are even on the prior board don't know about people on the prior board. So I think we could spend the time introducing ourselves with 3 sentences each about who we are, why we're here, and then what our areas of expertise are, why we wanted to come to the ASGARN. Then we can have each committee then discuss the status and focus of the committee's work. It might be a more productive way than just revisiting what the majority of us have already voted on. And so I'd like to make a motion that we table the discussion on the vision and mission statement and go with what we have so we can move forward as a group.
Lisa, we will not, as chair, be entertaining that at this point due to the advisory nature. This decision was already made in consultation with our legal counsel and our assistant attorney general.
So you're gonna, as the chair of the ASGARN, say that you will not allow that motion to be brought to the table.
It is a decision that was already made by the agency.
But the agency has representation. The ASGARN was created by Maryland statute.
Yes, and Maryland statute has allowed us to reset ASGARN. Lisa, we will be taking this discussion offline and I will be moving on with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I just want to give, and I just want to emphasize that we'll be moving forward with this input, and the timeline is still the case. We're not falling back on the timeline because of the fact that we reset the process of ASGARN in September, as we're being clear over the last 6 months, which is that we will be emailing this Google form in the next few days and submit input. And we want you to submit your input on the mission, vision, and guiding principles for the autism strategy program. With that, I am also going to submit.
Victoria, I'm gonna pause you simply because I see Corey Johns' hand is raised.
Hi, yeah, Delegate Guyton, again, she asked me just to mention, specifically with the legal guardrails that were listed, she did not see the Maryland statute or the bill that passed as part of the legal guidelines that were being followed. So it was a few slides back. So she just wants to make sure that compliance with the legislation, which was in 2020, HB 847, was, included in that legal guidelines for the work of the committee.
That is correct, and we have very closely been working with our legal counsel. Again, we are operating entirely with the opinion of our Assistant Attorney General. To clarify, I'd love to meet with the delegate to explain more at some point, maybe at the start of the session in Annapolis, which is that we are measuring precisely what is the process allowed and required by the statute, and what is the role of ASGARN, what is the role of the coordinator. And we actually were consulting with that the role of ASGARN is exactly to advise the process, but it is not, but ultimately the coordinator is in charge and essentially owns the liability politically, so to speak, of both legally and politically to issue the strategic plan and draft it. So ASGARN's role is to provide input in that sense.
But
this is the opinion of our legal counsel based on that statute that you just mentioned that passed. I was focused when it came to guardrails on issues that Maryland, regardless of what our General Assembly wishes, we have to abide by because they're federal issues that affect disability law.
I understand, but but specifically, Section C of that, it lays out what the strategic plan is required to do, and it has multiple points listed, and that was where the mission statement, the focus and the mission statement are in the law in the bill. So that's where the concern was about revising the mission statement that was already voted on. It's in the bill that passed.
I can assure you that we are in consultation with legal counsel to ensure that anything that comes out of this agency is in compliance with the statute.
That's all I have from her. So again, I'm speaking for Delegate Guyton. I'm just want to reiterate, I'm not speaking for myself. So, okay, thank you.
Victoria, I have my hand up if that's okay.
Go for it.
Awesome. So I just wanted to hop in and again, just thank everyone for all of the contributions that they've given, whether it was contributions here since ASGARN's been at MDOD or since it's been at GOSI. We've worked really hard to be upfront with this entire group, those that were on it previously and now the newcomers, about how we were moving forward and why we were moving forward in the way that we were. We did not get complete records from its home in the Governor's Office of Community Initiatives. We were getting emails from people with work, but we had no record of, was it voted on, who was a member that was formally appointed, what was formally adopted. And so when we sat down at the beginning, it was kind of a mess trying to figure out and how to organize how we move forward. And we came to the decision that we can't cleanly move forward, ensuring compliance, process, and transparency without starting somewhat fresh. Now, one of the things that I made it a point to mention in some of the conversations with individuals that were on ASGARN in its old home at GOSI is that while we weren't utilizing the old work as a starting point, we wanted you to resubmit your old work through the subcommittee process. And so I want to say that again. Please submit anything that you've done previously through the subcommittee process and some of the Google forms that are going to be shared today. But I think it's really important that as we move forward in its new home at MDOD, that we recognize that we have new voices on ASGARN. We've diversified ASGARN, and we have a number of self-advocates here as well. And we need to make sure that we're encompassing the vision and values of everyone that is on ASGARN here currently. So I will leave it at that, but that is why we've made these decisions. I do understand why there is some confusion with some of the legal guiding stars that have come up today and some of the previous work. Those things are absolutely separate from one another, and I hope that we can recognize that and move forward in a way that separates those two things. But all we want to do with this group is make sure that we get this strategic plan done, and we can finally, in good faith, stand the work up of this piece of legislation and be able to create a strategy for those with autism here in the state. We are deeply committed to that here at MDOD. So I just wanted to say that, and I will hop off my.
We only have 24 minutes left. So what I am going to do, and this has been a very rich discussion, I am going to go back to resharing this. We will be, once again, as a reminder, I'm going to share my screen again. We will be sending this present Google form, and everyone is welcome to submit either prior work or whatever they think should be their input on the vision, mission, and guiding principles for the strategy program. The Google form will be emailed to you. Like I said, I honestly want to do it today, but just because it's Friday afternoon and we have more meetings after this, it might be Monday. And the activity will be due January 16. I'm giving 2 weeks in January precisely to make sure that you don't have to be bothering yourself too much with it during the holidays when we all want to rest a bit and recharge and celebrate that this year is over in a way, as everyone does in the new year. With that, we are in the process of also updating our subcommittees because we have so many new people. I've even sent a few emails asking people to choose subcommittees. So what I'm going to do, because we only have like a little bit left and we still have the open forum left, is that we were going to send this survey and have it filled out live where people could rank their subcommittee preferences. I'm going to use a little bit of executive privilege and have that sent out over email and give everyone, including the folks who weren't able to make in like the weekend or a few days into the week to submit in. Lisa, you have your hand raised.
The form's in the chat. So if individuals would like to jump in and select their preferences now, I think that would be great. If that's okay. Yeah.
So you can start filling it in now if you want. I can't quite see the chat without being kind of wonky due to the fact that I'm screen sharing, but I will also be emailed if you do not wish to do it right now. Jalen. You're muted.
I wonder if there would be an opportunity because with the various committees that are being formulated, I'm wondering where there may be things that could be more compatible together or work together if the committees, before everything is submitted, could have an opportunity to converse. The thing that we have found in working with adulthood, that if we get one thing taken care of, it relates to so many other aspects of things. And if we don't coordinate a little bit with what the things are that we're trying to incorporate, we may each committee could go off in a slightly different tangent where actually if things are coordinated a little bit more, and I would say, just as an example, say housing. You can succeed in housing, but if you don't have something when you go outside of the front door, you don't have a complete life. And so what things do we need to look at in conjunction with housing? Because we can say, well, there's a house, but how happy is that life? How happy is that person? Unless there's community engagement and other things. So where can we perhaps coordinate the activities of the various committees rather than saying, we want this and we want that? Whereas if there was conversation, there might be a little bit of a compromise that can move things forward in a more unified fashion. And we've been seeing over the last 16 years something within the autism community that often there are singular ideas that are excellent. But sometimes we have needed to come together to make certain that everything is working in a forward fashion. It can be, you've got to have good medical care if you're going to, lead a healthy life. And how do we ensure that? I mean, there's just many, many different types of things that need to come together. And how can we have these committees perhaps confer with one another so we're moving everything together in a unified fashion so we can get further along and in a more direct fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I really want to take that into account as we move forward with having the strategic plan and vision, the mission vision statement element by the end of January. So, and we should probably touch base offline about that. And I also encourage if anyone has input that they would like to not necessarily speak in front of a crowd, or you think about it after this meeting, please do reach out. You have my email. To give the timeline in the interest of time, at their next subcommittee, at the next meeting, the subcommittees will be meeting. I will be sending calendar invites in the next few days. For mid to late January, you will be presented the finalized mission, vision, and guiding principles of the Autism Strategy Program. And the subcommittees will begin then working on their suggestions for goals and objectives. And I'm sorry for the typo of that there, of goals and objectives to be included in the strategic plan. Rebecca, I see your hand raised. I want to finish this line. And then the suggestions will be presented by subcommittee chairs at the next full ASGARN meeting in the spring. Rebecca.
I guess I have some clarification as far as the subcommittees are concerned. Are we starting over with the subcommittees? Are we getting new chairs? I'm sort of unclear what's happening there on it.
Yeah, we were
Since
discussing at the subcommittee some timelines where we wanted the suggestions and input of the subcommittees. Like we discussed, and I don't know if you recall, I think in the safety subcommittee when we were together, like we wanted to truly begin the work of the subcommittees once all the members were on board in to make sure that the input was genuinely diverse.
No, I definitely yeah, I'm sorry. I recall that part. It's not the definitely we said we had to pause because we didn't have enough representation at the table at that point. I guess I'm confused. If the committee chairs are being asked to step down,
no,
we haven't had consultation on timelines or
consultation
on meeting dates.
If the subcommittees want new chairs, if a subcommittee wants a new chair, that's great. If the subcommittee wishes when they meet to have the old chair, that's also great. That's up to the subcommittee. And I will be there to help guide you. And if there are questions about what can be done or cannot be done that I cannot answer, I'll also reach out to the AAG to make sure that we are kosher. But yeah, no, we're not,
Well, yeah, it's just, I'm a little concerned because I know in our subcommittees, both in the actual subcommittees and in the committee chair meetings, we expressed the timeline was a bit ambitious, which I still think it is given session and everything else. So I'm hoping that there's an opportunity for the chairs to maybe convene with you to have a conversation about when meeting dates are going to be and how our schedules and our other life are going to work with this very aggressive timeline, which was presented without consultation, frankly. So I'm not sure as a being charged with in a chair role and being charged with delivering something that I didn't have an input on the timeline for is
Well,
a bit
to be
overwhelming.
honest, I realize the timeline is a bit tough at times, but I feel very much we have to do that in the spirit of the statute, of what it requires me and all of us. When the legislature passed this initial law, when it was negotiating in 2020, it was expecting a strategic plan by mid-2021, regardless of whether that was possible given the pandemic. That I am trying to abide by a similar timeline when we moved to MDOD, and I was appointed shortly after in 2023 to have the strategic plan ready and done, and for us to move into leading the implementation process by mid-2024.
Yeah, I'm certainly aware of the deadlines we missed, but again, just concerned. So I'll be thinking
Yeah.
about whether I can fulfill that role as chair with that timeline.
I understand. We
Thank you.
can figure that out. Yeah. Lisa, do you still have the hand up from last time, or?
No, I don't. As a committee chair, I just wanted to talk about the support the committee chairs will be getting. I had asked it before, and I understand the admin wasn't hired. I don't know the status of the admin or what chairs would be expected to do as far as what type of support that the chairs would be getting from either you or the admin or MDOD moving forward.
So I can say that we are almost finalized with choosing. We just chose and are in the process of extending offer to an admin support person that I will be supervising and will be assisting me and the deputy secretary and the secretary. I'm very hesitant to give more details because of the whole HR confidentiality rules type of stuff that happens there, but that is, I'm hoping to have that person as soon as we can have a start date. And I want to assure every subcommittee chair that I will be at the subcommittee meetings as an ex officio member of each one, and I will be available as a constant resource for everyone to ensure that everything is done. With that, because it's already 2:17 and I know people's time is valuable. I want to move on to, well, the open forum, which will probably have to be short because we only have 13 minutes left on the timer. This is not just questions for me. You can say your heart out. So again, I want to prioritize people who haven't spoken yet. One mic, one voice, don't interrupt each other, you know.
This is Lydia. I just want to share that in reading some of the emails and hearing some of the comments today, it sounds like there's been a bit of tension, and what sounds like a bit of a brewing conflict between the folks that have been here for longer, and where we are right now. And I will just say that I'm a bit confused, and part of that is probably because, I'm coming in, I'm newer, I was just appointed, so I don't necessarily have the history, and I don't necessarily know what conversations have already happened, but I would really like to offer a perspective that, based at least just on what I'm hearing, I don't think that there should be a conflict. It sounds like, and I would expect that this is the case, that everybody who's here and part of this committee is here because we share common goals. That is, of making sure that autistic people of all ages are appropriately supported in the state, of making sure that they and their families have appropriate access to services, that those services promote quality of life and positive outcomes, whether in education or in employment and otherwise. And that, at least to me, doesn't seem like it should be contentious. And so the question that sounded like it was being raised as to whether readdressing our mission, vision, and values would be moving away from the statutory intent in the legislation that created the committee, I don't personally see why that should be the case. And it doesn't really make sense to me that looking at and giving the newer members an opportunity to review and perhaps suggest if there's room for making suggestions, any alteration to the vision, mission, and values would have to conflict with adhering to and fulfilling our legislative mandate as a commission. And I also don't know that I don't think that there's any reason that thinking about the outcomes of disability rights law would in any way conflict with that either, as someone who's been practicing for a long time and working in disability rights law and policy as well, because the outcomes that are stipulated in our federal disability rights law seem to be naturally aligned with the goals that I have heard coming out of the conversation here and what was shared about the mission of promoting quality of life and ensuring that autistic people are able to achieve that. So to me, it really just sounds like it's a question of making sure that we're clear as a group on what quality of life means so that we are working toward the same cluster of outcomes, even if each of us may not be fully in agreement on every single minutia of details of what would be most helpful for every autistic person. It probably would be helpful to make sure that we're overall on the same page. And that's at least what I'm hearing. And that's a conversation that I would be really interested in and open to having. And like I mentioned in my email, I would love to hear the perspectives of those who were here over the last 2 years because I don't have them. And I'd appreciate hearing that too. And we probably can't do that in 9 minutes. So I'd also be happy to connect offline with anyone too.
Before I pass it on to Lisa, who has her hand raised, I want to make sure that anyone who hasn't spoken yet, but wants to speak, hasn't.
I'm having trouble finding the hand button on mine, but if I can just go ahead and jump in and share. So I'm wondering, after hearing the thoughts of several members, and I will say that I was actually a part of the previous ASGARN committee, and I agree that we all had put in a lot of work and certainly, don't want to duplicate work. But on the other hand, while I'm looking at the previous vision statement about we envision that Marylanders on the autism spectrum, their families and caregivers experience a high quality of life. I am wondering, based on what Lydia just said, if it might be helpful to add in, I think it's those 5 category areas of education, health, housing, transportation, and it might be just a little bit more specific to add in those 5 areas in terms of defining what a high quality of life means.
Thank you. Thank you. If no one else wants to go, Lisa, do you want to speak before we move again?
Sure. I just wanted to clarify to Lydia, I appreciate what you're saying. The conflict was not about what you were stating. The conflict was that we had already voted on it and we need to move on given this very ambitious schedule and leave that behind and just keep moving forward. We're not
find the intent for tomorrow.
Voices. In fact, most of the work is going to be done in the committees. We're actually trying to get people to start doing the work and get their voices heard by the committee work. So I think there may have been some lack of communication either on my part or whomever. And so we're not trying to silence anyone. We're just trying to say, hey, we did work very hard on this vision and mission statement. The language is literally almost completely drawn from the legislation, which I have in front of me. So given that it's not in conflict with the legislation, we should just move on so we can do the work, because this will stop us from doing the work while we discuss this for a month to go and give feedback. I think the next time we're supposed to talk about this is January 16th. So that was the intent of that. I will say about the vision statement, I do strategic planning for a living, and vision statements in my experience are supposed to be very broad. And then I could see, I think it was Emily who had mentioned going more specific, that could be in the mission statement. And I'm totally not opposed if you want to add to what we already have, but recreating the wheel, we have tons of important work to do. I just think is not our best interest. And that's where I was going with that.
With that, because I need to eventually make the final announcement of our final date, I'm going to have Jalen, who raised her hand, and Deputy Secretary Bill Castro in that order, and then I will entertain to adjourn. Jalen, you're muted.
We had had someone at the helm before who was very caring. There were a lot of issues that came about out of her control and a number of other situations. So it's not a personal type of thing. But one thing that I will say is that a lot of people who had been involved kept finding that dates were changed. There was one meeting that was going to be held, and we had 6 different timeframes for that meeting. And so for somebody to say, well, everybody voted on it, it's almost impossible because we were getting different dates and different times and times changing for almost every meeting. So if you've checked one, you got in on that meeting, it may not have been held. So when you're saying unanimously, unanimous with maybe those who appeared, but not everybody got the right information at the right time. I think that's a huge challenge right there. And there may be a need to get everybody's voice because we've got a different situation. You've got different supports. It's a different day. We could have some of the same results coming in, but I would also add to that list of 5 community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jalen. Deputy Secretary.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And I just wanted to raise again how much we appreciate all the work that has been done previously, and lift up again that no one's asking anyone to recreate the wheel. We're just asking the work to be resubmitted through the formal channels that we've created here at MDOD. I hope everyone can recognize the difficulty of getting work sent from people's personal emails, all parsed and unsure of what was formally done, formally discussed in its previous home. So all we're asking you to do is resubmit your work. And in the meantime, while it's being resubmitted, we have new members who have the opportunity to weigh in. That's what we're asking. And I hope that we can hold on to that and we can walk away with that point, because we're not asking you to start over. We're just asking you to resubmit. Thank you for everything that you guys have done. We appreciate the work. We feel confident that this is where ASGARN is meant to be, and we feel confident that we're going to stand this up and we're going to get this done, and we're going to move it in a way, move it forward in the way that the legislation was intended. And we are excited and honored to get to do that here at MDOD. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you again, everyone.
With that, I want to make the announcement. I'm going to share again the screen. Dan, the next ASGARN quarterly meeting is on March 12th, 2024. I am going to make sure in the coming days before I head out that everyone has it in their calendars. As you all know, I said at the state government, we use G Suite, so you'll get a Google Calendar invite. And then it will have the Zoom link added to it eventually as we have it and whatnot. It will be also at 1 p.m., 1 to 2:30 p.m. Again, March 12th, 2024. If there are any sudden changes, like for some weird reason I get sucked into jury duty again, I will make sure that everyone knows in advance with enough time to schedule like we just did. With that, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Lydia. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any opposition? With nobody opposing, the motion passes and the meeting is adjourned. Have a good Friday, everyone, and a happy holiday season.